It is a truth universally acknowledged that every romance must feature at least one character who is an unmitigated asshole. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I'm taking you through some books that have the grumpy sunshine trope. So if you are looking for a character who is like a ray of sunshine, super happy, you never see them in a bad mood, paired with somebody who basically walks around with a grey cloud over their head, these are definitely the books for you. Some of these I have already read them, I have already loved them. Some of these are still on my TBR, I've still got my sights set on them, but they are definitely books that I think you should go and check out. First up is The Falling in Love Montage by Kira Smith. This was Kira's debut and it is a YA book, but I would still recommend it if you are a fan of a grumpy sunshine trope. It is a female-female romance between Ruby and Saoirse. Saoirse is going through a bit of a rough time at the moment. Her mother is going through some pretty tough health problems. Her life at home is a little bit unstable, but when she meets Ruby, tries to bring Saoirse back out of her shell a little bit. Ruby introduces Saoirse to the idea of the meet cute, of the perfect romance, of all of these romantic stories that Ruby has just adored, which are pretty much in direct opposition to the horror and thriller and gore that Saoirse is used to. I absolutely loved this book because I am a rom-com connoisseur. There's a list of rom-coms at the back that is recommended for you to check out if you've loved this book, and it's still a list I'm going through to this day. Next up is Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert, and there is a very good reason as to why this is so many people's favourite of the Brown sister trilogy. This one follows Eve Brown, who is by far the most chaotic of the three sisters. She is the youngest, and her parents have decided that they are going to cut her out of the family inheritance if she doesn't just get her act together. She is told to go and get a job, hold it down for 6 months, and then they will reconsider their offer. While Eve is on a drive looking for said perfect job, she comes across a B&B, which is owned by Jacob. She goes in, she does an interview, kind of tanks it. Jacob doesn't see the two of them working together, and when Eve gets back into her car, she accidentally knocks Jacob over, breaks his arm, and is then given the task anyway of being the B&B's chef for a couple of weeks while Jacob is getting his health back together. I loved how vibrant and how exciting Eve is in comparison to Jacob's kind of held back demeanour. You can see the reasons why Jacob is held back. They do become a little bit more apparent as the book goes on, but I really loved this contrast between the two of them. You see Jacob start to soften a lot over the course of this book, and it has some really memorable scenes. One involving a pond, one involving manure. I'm not going to say much more than that. Just definitely go and pick this book up. Next on the list is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, and I could pretty much have fit any Ali Hazelwood into this, but I've decided to go with the OG. This one follows Olive and Adam, who are two kind of rival academics at a university. One day, when Olive is trying to convince her friend Anne that Olive is okay with Anne going out with Olive's ex-boyfriend, she decides that the best way to convince her friend is to just basically make out with the first person who passes by. That person happens to be Adam, who has a reputation among the university as being very cold-hearted, very kind of kept together, held back. And as the course of the novel goes on, Olive and Adam decide to fake date each other for their own benefits, and you can see the real feelings starting to come out and Adam starting to thaw. I really loved the academic setting in this. There are a couple of things that, looking back on it, I'm not entirely sure if I love it. It was the first Ali Hazelwood book that I read, so I was pretty fresh to the concept of her books. So I think maybe that is why I held it up on a little bit more of a pedestal than the others, but I definitely think it's a good place to start with her work. My next recommendation is The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. I have loved Christina Lauren's books since the first one that I read, and I feel like this one went way back on the upswing because there were a couple that I read before this that I didn't really gel with as much as the others. This one follows River and Jess. River is a kind of a data scientist, and he has created an app called DataMe or something along that line, where you are basically matched with somebody to go on a date based on how compatible your DNA is. Jess's friend Fizzy signs her up for this app because Jess is kind of going through a dry spell at the moment, and she and River match with a 99% compatibility rate. This is unheard of for the entire app. Nobody has ever gotten such a high rate before. So in order to promote the app, River and Jess are thrown into a kind of a media frenzy advertising campaign And of course, spending more time together and getting to know each other is starting to bring some feelings to the fore. If you also really enjoyed this book, Fizzy, who is Jess's best friend in this book, has got her own book called The True Love Experiment, which has just come out in May of 2023. And I also definitely recommend this one, even if it's not in the Grumpy Sunshine trope. Another beginning to a duology is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. It's not usual for me to recommend a Tessa Bailey book, but this is the only one thus far that I have read and I've loved, and I definitely think I should recommend to you. If you are a Schitt's Creek fan, this book is 100% up your street. It follows Piper, who is a well-to-do heiress, LA girl, and one night her partying gets a little bit out of hand. She is found on the roof of a hotel, she is arrested, and her stepfather sends her off to Westport in Washington, which is a little fishing village. She and her sister are going to kind of clean up their act, get their lives together, and while they're there, they're going to work for their father's pub. Their father has passed away, but they are being sent off to kind of reconnect with his family and with his spirit. While Piper is there, she bumps into a farmer named Brendan, who is a widower, and he hasn't really gone on a date or had any kind of interaction since his wife passed away. As you can imagine, Brendan is still going through all of the heartache that all of that can bring along, but Piper really starts to bring him back to life. She really starts to bring him back around. And I genuinely loved the connection that Piper and Brendan had. I really enjoyed reading about them. This book is also pretty spicy, as you can expect from a Tessa Bailey book. So if you are looking for something that's a little bit more on the spicy scale, this one is definitely the one to check out. Another great female-female romance with the Grumpy Sunshine trope is Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellfleur. This is the first in the Written in the Stars series, and I absolutely love these books. This follows Elle and Darcy, who go on a pretty horrible first date. Elle accidentally manages to knock an entire glass of wine over Darcy's favourite white dress, and they just basically don't connect for the entire thing. However, when Darcy meets with her brother, who is an app developer, she learns that Elle kind of thought that the date was going a lot better because Elle is one of the developers working with Brendan on a brand new app. This app is kind of based on dating profiles that are matched with your star sign. So if you liked the idea of a dating profile that is matched on personal information, this might be a really good follow-up book for you to try out. As I said, it's also the start of a series, and all of the books in it have got different tropes, they've got different characters. They're all set in Seattle, I think in Washington, and they are just such a phenomenal read for you to have. Yet another female-female romance with the Grumpy Sunshine trope, and yet another first in a series, is Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. This follows Delilah and Claire. Delilah grew up in the small town of Bright Falls, but she left about 10 years ago to head for New York and make her name as a photographer. The making her name part didn't exactly work out. She's kind of struggling at the moment, but her stepsister Astrid is getting married back in Bright Falls and has given Astrid about $15,000 to come back and take pictures for the wedding in the lead up to it, gave about 2 weeks of her life up, and then most of Delilah's money worries will have faded away. While Delilah is back, however, she bumps into Claire again, who is one of Astrid's best friends, and Delilah had a massive crush on Claire while she was younger. The two of them are now grown up. Claire is actually a single mother. She's still in touch with her daughter's father. And there's a little bit of a messy relationship going on there, but I really, really loved watching Delilah and Claire get back together, kind of rediscover the feelings that it turns out both of them had had for each other when they were younger. And I really loved how snarky Delilah can be, how sarcastic she can be. I feel like she and I have a quite similar sense of humour. So it was a little bit like reading myself in a book, which I am never going to complain about. But as with It Happened One Summer, this one is a pretty steamy book. So if you're looking for a book with a little bit of spice in it, definitely pick this one up. My next recommendation is Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is Emily Henry's adult debut, but she has written a couple of other YA books before this. This book follows January and Gus, who were classmates on the same creative writing or just English writing MA, I believe. It's now a couple of years after they've graduated, and the two of them accidentally turn out to be neighbours in two beach houses in, I think, Michigan. January's father has just died, and she is going through a little bit of writer's block when she realises some things that had happened in his life that she wasn't exactly aware about. January writes a lot of kind of chick lit, women's fiction, whereas Gus is a lot more of a darker themed guy. He writes a lot of thrillers, he writes a lot of crime and mystery books. And to get out of their writing slumps, the two of them decide to swap genres. So January is going to write the next best thriller, and Gus is going to try his hand at something a little bit lighter and fluffier. The problem is that both of them have pretty much been at loggerheads since they moved in beside each other. And now that they are spending a little bit more time together, having to research each other's genre and having to research the ideas that the other has had for their books, things are starting to thaw out a little bit. This is a really, really great book. It's not so heavy on the romance this time. I would say that this is a little bit more of a women's fiction with a slight romantic subplot. So if you're not looking for something that's heavy on the romance, this might be the way to go. This next recommendation is a little bit contentious because it's very much a BookTube Marmite book. People either absolutely adore it and give it 5 stars, or they completely trash it and give it 1 star. I have seen absolutely nothing in the middle. But this book is The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. This book follows Catalina, who has been dumped by her boyfriend recently and needs to bring somebody to her sister's wedding. She needs to have a +1, basically so that her Spanish family aren't going to bombard her with the usual questions of when are you going to settle down, when are you going to get married, when are you going to give us grandchildren. She only has about a month to find somebody, and she ends up finding her co-worker Aaron, who never got along with her. She and Aaron have been at loggerheads basically since the day that they first met, but she is really in a bind. And she basically bribes him into coming as her +1 on this trip across the Atlantic for her sister's wedding. And of course, while they are in the confines of Spain, things really start to heat up between the two of them. I am really interested to see what you're going to think about this one because I know how contentious this one is. I know it's an up or a down. I'm really interested to see what you're going to think. If you would like to flip the trope on its head and have the guy being the sunshine and the woman being a little bit of a grump, then definitely go and check out Always Only You by Chloe Leese. This is the second book of the Bergman Brothers series, but I wouldn't necessarily say that you need to read all of them in order. So if you haven't read the first one, don't worry, you're completely fine to check this one out straight away. This book follows Ren and Frankie. Ren is a hockey player and Frankie is one of the backroom team. And while they're working together, there is an absolute ban on the two of them dating. However, feelings have still started to make their way in, and they are starting to notice each other both on and off the hockey pitch. My next recommendation is Twice Shy by Sarah Hogel. This one follows Maybelle, who is a complete head in the clouds romantic. She is a romance connoisseur. She reads a lot of the books, she watches a lot of the movies, but her own romantic life hasn't exactly mirrored what she's been watching or what she's been reading. But her great aunt, who has passed away, has left her a huge house in the mountain in her will, and Maybelle heads off, packs her bags, and decides to do the house up. The issue is that it's not only Maybelle who's living on the grounds. Also there is Wesley, who is like the groundskeeper or the gardener, and he is incredibly grouchy. As you would expect when a stranger basically turns up at your front door and says, "Hey, I also live here now." But their relationship starts to really bloom as their book goes on, and it is so wonderful to see that little turnaround in the midway point. If you're a fan of books that have the celebrity trope in them as well, then definitely go and check out When in Rome by Sarah Adam. This is also a very clean, closed-door romance, so if you're not looking for something steamy, or if really explicit sex scenes is not something for you, I would recommend this. This book follows Amelia, who has made a name for herself as the pop star Ray Rose, but the price of fame is really starting to get to her, so she takes off on her own Roman holiday, inspired by Audrey Hepburn, and heads for Rome, Kentucky. She decides to recluse herself for a little bit, kind of rediscover the things that make her happy, and while she is there, she bumps into Noah, who is the owner of the town's bakery, and he decides to show her around. But he is incredibly grouchy, he is incredibly grumpy, and they kind of butt heads almost as soon as Amelia turns up. This is another start of a series, and I am so interested to see how this is going to go. This is one that I haven't actually picked up yet, but I am so interested to see how Sarah Adams' writing is going to work for me. I have heard, as I said, that this is very closed door, so I'm interested to see if I'm going to still enjoy a book, even when the sex scenes that I have generally enjoyed in other books have been taken away. Another celebrity romance is All the Fields by Olivia Dade. This is the second book of the Spoiler Alert series, and you might want to read the first one of this already because you do miss out on a couple of context clues in this. especially for the Inward TV series Gods of the Gates, which is where Alex works. Alex is an actor, he stars as Cupid on the show, and things have not really gone well for him recently. His character has been kind of written into a rut. He has gone out to a couple of bars recently to kind of vent his frustrations in the form of alcohol, and the tabloids have started picking up on it. So basically, his star is on the fall. Enter Lauren. She is a PR therapist who is sent to basically clean up his image and almost babysit him for a couple of months to make sure that he doesn't step a toe out of line, to make sure that everything stays above board. And while they are pretty much stuck together for a little bit of time, they start to really fall for one another. This is, as I said, the second book of a series. I've got the first one already read, and I've also got a copy of the third one on my shelves too, and I am so excited to actually get these two finished. A sports romance to check out is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. This is truly having a moment. Hockey romances as a whole are truly having a moment right now. So if you are caught up in the craze, definitely go and check this one out. However, it does come with a 4 chilies warning. This is by far the spiciest book on this list. It follows Anastasia and Nate. Anastasia is a competitive figure skater and she has gotten a scholarship so that she can come study but also hone her craft. And Nate is the captain of the university's ice hockey team, and a mishap in the facilities department means that Anastasia and her other competitive figure skaters and Nate and his hockey team are going to have to share an ice rink. This starts to drive tensions between the two of them, but also ice does start to thaw eventually. And finally, an author who has actually already appeared on this list is Olivia Dade, and this book is Teach Me, the first in the There's Something About Marysburg series. This follows Martin and Rose. Martin turns up at Rose's school as a fellow teaching assistant or as a teacher, and there is immediate aggro. Basically because the administrations department have given Martin Rose's world history class, which is one of her favourite to teach, and she looks forward to it every single time it's on her schedule. Sparks starts to fly between the two of them, but it turns out that you can learn to love your coworkers. Those are some of the books with the grumpy sunshine trope that I definitely think you need to set your sights on. Have I missed out on any of your favorites, or is there one of those that you join me in recommending? If you would love to leave me a comment but you can't think of anything you'd like to say, then just leave me the sun emoji. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.